Where's the independence of the committee? Where's the legislature? We're an equal branch of government. And you start off with a blather, and yet look at the empty seats here. Where's Elon Musk? I'm sure he's a genius and is a very credible person because of the wealth he's accumulated. But that does not put him above the law or the responsibility to come before this committee in this Congress. If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he's found are so eminent, why isn't he here explaining it? You know why. Because he's out to privatize Social Security.
A lot has literally gone down this period. You remember DOGE, right? Do you guys remember that? The breeze has blew and everything is now wide open. As usual, you guys know that whenever I want to stitch my videos, I'll first of all go ahead and stitch the exact thing where it started, how it started. I went through up and down. I'm not going to be saying hell to make sure I wrote out these videos for you guys. Guys, it is interesting for you to watch because there is fire on the mountain. Run, run, run. When we think we are done with one, another one will literally pops up. First of all, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sonia. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. And credits belong to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I did not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. With that being said, let's go watch, and I'll be back with commentaries. It's gonna be juicy. Let's go watch.
How do you interpret DEI?
There was the EO explicitly laid out. The details, I don't remember it off the top of my head.
It's okay. I'm asking for your understanding of it.
Yeah, my understanding was exactly what was written in the EO.
Okay, so can you...
I don't remember what was in the EO.
So right now, do you have an understanding of what DEI is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding as you sit here today in this deposition?
Well, it was exactly what was written in the EO. And so anytime that we would look at a grant through the lens of complying with an executive order, we would just refer back to the EO and assess if this grant had relation to it.
Okay, but I guess I'm stepping back from your methodology strictly in terminating the grants. Do you have an understanding as you sit here today of what DEI means?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding of what it means?
Well, it is exactly what was written in the EO.
Okay, so...
and I don't have the EO in front of me, but that was, we would always reference back to the EO and make sure that this grant was in compliance with the EO.
I understand that. Okay, but I'm not asking necessarily about what was in the EO. I'm asking very specifically about your present understanding of what of DEI. Do you have a present understanding of DEI?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain what that present understanding is?
Well, it's just easier for me to be referencing back to the EO.
Are you refusing to answer the question?
I'm not refusing to answer the question.
Okay.
I just feel that referencing back to the verbatim executive order was the best way for us to capture all of the DEI language. And so I think giving a high-level overview of what I could relay as DEI is not going to do justice what was written in the EO.
And that's okay. We can look at the EO as well. Great. I'm asking you for, I mean, this is a deposition. I'm asking you questions. You're under oath. And you're required to answer them. So what is your understanding of what DEI means?
Well, I think I would say, again, that I would go back to the EO to make sure I'm capturing enough. I don't feel comfortable saying a high-level overview because it is such a big bucket, and there's just a lot of pieces of the puzzle.
What's a part of the bucket?
Gender fluidity, sort of promoting promoting subsets of LGBTQ plus that might alienate another part of a community. Again, it was just easier for us to reference back into the EO.
Okay, so...
And I don't want to give you a broad overview because it's like, at the end of the day, it is capturing, it is all-encompassing in the EO. It's how we did our methodology.
Right. Do you always refer to EOs to gain an understanding of words used in your typical daily vernacular?
Objection.
What do you mean?
You say that you have an understanding of what DEI means, and when I ask you, you say you need to reference the EO. Do you need to reference EOs to define every word you use in your everyday life?
Objection.
No.
Okay, so what's stopping you from defining DEI to your understanding as you sit here today on January 28th, 2026?
It wouldn't be capturing enough of how big the topic is. DEI is a very broad structure. I'm giving my limited recall of what's included is just not.
Okay, I understand. Genevieve?
So I'll just read this one. It says, examining military service from the margins, the complicated service discussion series will bring together veterans and community members to examine the experiences of service members who identify themselves as female, Black, Native American, LGBTQ, or an immigrant, the dynamics, reasoning, and strength behind serving a country that does not always serve you in return. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
You and Mr. Fox identified this as one of the craziest grants at NEH?
I don't know, go to the left. Yes, it appears so.
Why did you do that?
Because it explicitly says LGBTQ.
Let's look at another one. Row 20. The shorty description here is legacies of HIV/AIDS prison movements in the United States. And I'll just read the long description. This is a history of the HIV/AIDS prison movement and its legacies in the United States. My book project narrates how activists fought the convergence of HIV/AIDS and incarceration from inside and outside prisons across the Reagan through Clinton years, and argues that this organizing holds legacies in the prison abolition movement of the 1990s to today. Drawing on archival and community-engaged research and oral history, I examine how incarcerated people organized HIV education and AIDS care work, and how supporters collaborated in protests and advocacy campaigns. The movement prolonged lives, changed policies, and confronted state-sanctioned harms with strategies for a freer and healthier society. I argue that by fighting HIV/AIDS in prisons, activists came to confront incarceration itself, bringing feminist and queer insights into prison abolition. My book will be of interest to scholars of history, gender, and LGBTQ studies, and the medical humanities, and to general readers interested in incarceration, abolition, and the impacts of HIV/AIDS and other pandemics. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
This is one of the grants that you or Mr. Fox identified as craziest at NEH, is that right?
That's right.
Do you recall whether you identified it as craziest or whether Mr. Fox did?
I don't recall.
Why did you identify this as one of the craziest grants?
Because it references feminist and queer insights into prison abolition and LGBTQ studies.
Any other reasons?
No.
There's a section later on in the spreadsheet called bad grants, if we could scroll down to that. It says other bad grants. What were these?
So in addition to our work of identifying grants related to DEI or others in the executive orders that we referenced previously. We also helped Mike and Adam identify other potential wasteful grants outside of DEI that we thought were potential for being canceled.
Let's take a look at row 36. So the short description here is documentary on Shirley Clark, founder of American Independent Film, DEI Films. And I'll just read the long description. It says, documentary about Shirley Clark, founder of American Independent Film. How do you break into the boys' club of film directing? Shirley Clark was a groundbreaking artist and the leader of the movement that created independent film in the United States. She declared war on Hollywood by telling stories about people who had always been excluded from the big screen. Black stories, gay stories, true stories. She was the only American to win recognition for her independent films in the 1960s. But then she was almost excluded herself, written out of film history. In our film, her contributions and extraordinary life come back to life. A timely tale of cool identity and struggle in New York City, Cannes, and Los Angeles from the 1950s to the 1980s with jazz. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
You and Mr. Fox identified this as one of the bad grants, correct?
Correct.
Why did you identify it as a bad grant?
We, the same reason as previously.
Maybe you just say it again.
Sure. We felt that it was in violation of the White House executive orders.
2 DOGE employees were just deposed under oath, and what came out should make every single taxpayer furious. They had no qualifications, no written rules, and they used ChatGPT to cut over 1,000 federally funded grants. And now, a federal judge wants the receipts. Here's what you need to know. Justin Fox and Nathan Kavanaugh, 2 guys with 0 government experience, were recruited into DOGE through a Silicon Valley venture capital network, not through any government hiring process, through a VC fund. One of them founded a startup. The other did accounting software for small businesses. And they were each paid $120,000 a year in your tax dollars. No formal title, no written job description, and they were handed the power to eliminate entire federal agencies. Now, here's where it gets wild. According to the depositions and reporting, Justin Fox and Nathan Kavanaugh used ChatGPT, a third-party AI tool to help determine which grants and programs violated Trump's DEI executive orders. Think about what that means. Federal grant data, agency personnel information, government spending records, potentially sensitive program details. They entered it into ChatGPT, which stores everything on OpenAI's servers. Here's why that matters. A federal judge has already ordered OpenAI to preserve those ChatGPT output logs. They are now part of the court record. Under the third-party doctrine, anything shared with a third party, including an AI chatbot, is not protected. Those logs can be subpoenaed, and the court knows it. But the depositions themselves, even more damning. Here's what Nathan Kavanaugh admitted under oath. Number 1, when asked to define DEI, he said on the record that he could not define it without looking at the grants themselves. He had no consistent standard. His working definition was making decisions on a basis of something other than merit. That's it. That's what 1,500 NEH grants were judged against. 2, when asked about training, guidance, or books, if any of those informed his decisions, his answer, there were no books. No written policy, no legal framework, just his own judgment. 3, his explicit tiebreaker policy when uncertain, and I quote, "We erred on the side of the cut versus keep. So when in doubt, cancel the grant." 4, Justin Fox sent emails to the NEH acting chairman claiming, and I quote, "We're getting pressure from the top to move faster on cancellations." Kavanaugh admitted under oath there was no such pressure. It was manufactured, a tactic to bully a federal agency into compliance. 5, the signal thing. In the final pages of Kavanaugh's deposition, the attorney directly references him emailing yourself and then using that email on Signal to send to Steve Davis. Steve Davis being the CEO of Elon Musk's Boring Company, which ran the DOGE operation. Signal auto-deletes. That's the whole point. And it's now confirmed in a court transcript. This isn't abstract. This is your money. The National Endowment for the Humanities funds literary programs, history education, local libraries, community archives, things that exist in your town. They were cut, not by Congress, not through any vote, by two unelected tech bros with no credentials, no legal authority to make those calls, and a ChatGPT subscription. And when they needed to move faster, they lied to a federal official about White House pressure that did not exist. That's not government efficiency. That's coercion, my friends. Justin Fox and Nathan Kavanaugh were deposed in January. The video recordings were ordered taken down in March, but the transcripts are thankfully public record. I've reviewed them, and what's in there is only now getting the attention it deserves. The ChatGPT logs are preserved, the Signal use is confirmed, and the case is still active. So, follow for updates and drop a comment if you want me to go any deeper on any of this, and share it, because the people who benefit most from you not knowing this are counting on you to stay quiet. Thanks for paying attention, and stay safe and get out in nature.
So if you missed this video yesterday, this is Justin Fox, a staff member with the Department of Government Efficiency, sitting for a deposition in a lawsuit regarding his role in the termination of grants with the National Endowment for the Humanities. Now, part of Fox's job was to carry out an executive order which called for the removal of DEI programs within the federal government. Well, he was asked by an attorney to explain what DEI is, and here's what he said.
But right now, do you have an understanding of what DEI is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding as you sit here today in this deposition?
Well, it was exactly what was written in the EO. And so anytime that we would look at a grant through the lens of complying with an executive order, we would just refer back to the EO and assess if this grant had relation to it.
Okay, but I guess stepping back from your methodology strictly in terminating the grants, do you have an understanding as you sit here today of what DEI means?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding of what it means?
Well, it is exactly what was written in the EO.
Okay, so
and I don't have the EO in front of me, but that was we would always reference back to the EO.
I spoke with dozens of federal workers that told me that it was staffers like Justin that were walking the halls of federal agencies determining which programs should go and which programs should stay, and that many of these staffers had very little knowledge about, one, how the federal government and its programming worked, and two, how these programs were in fact executed. There are other investigations regarding DOGE staffers as well, particularly at the Social Security Administration. A whistleblower has come forward alleging that a DOGE staffer misused the sensitive information of thousands of Americans. We'll wait and see how these legal challenges play out, but again, there are renewed concerns about the work that DOGE did while it was functioning and the impact that it potentially could have in the long term on the federal government. Be sure to like and follow for more.
This is mind-blowing.
Do you think it's inappropriate in any way that someone in their 20s with no experience with grants for federal government was making personal judgment calls about what grants to cancel?
Please listen to what he says and pay attention.
No, I don't think it's inappropriate.
Why not?
A person can have enough judgment from reading books.
So presumably you read some of these books that would have informed you on how to cancel a grant based on DEI?
Please remember that he's the one who said reading books. Watch his face.
It's actually.
We told you they had no idea what they were doing. You insisted that everything was being done according to a plan. That is the face of someone who's trying to find a way to excuse his behavior, his actions, and has nothing to say.
I did not read a book on how to discern whether a grant includes DEI or not.
You have to see that when your party hires loyalists, people who will just do whatever you tell them to do no matter what, that is a problem. We are so fucking cooked.
So these two 20-something DOGE guys were sent into the National Endowment for the Humanities, which oversees over $100 million in academic grants. It has linguists preserving dying languages, historians documenting atrocities, and archivists saving irreplaceable cultural records. And then the bros hit the scene. One of them a college dropout. Both pumped full of narcissistic assholery. Well, here's how they decided which grants to cancel. They copy-pasted the grant description into ChatGPT, and they typed in, "Does this relate at all to DEI? Answer yes or no." That's it. That's the entire methodology. Oh, and they didn't actually define what DEI meant for the AI. They just assumed the chatbot would figure it out. Which, to be fair, the chatbot did its best. It flagged things like melting pot. Yes, the phrase melting pot got a grant canceled. It gets worse. One of the canceled grants was a documentary about female Holocaust survivors. When the DOGE bro was asked why he canceled that grant, he said,
It's the gender-based story that's inherently discriminatory to focus on this specific group.
It's inherently discriminatory to focus on what specific group?
The gender-based, so females during the Holocaust.
The Holocaust victims were too specific a group. He was uncomfortable with how narrowly they'd been targeted. Okay. The bros were asked, did you consult any scholars, any historians, any of the NEH's own expert review panels that exist specifically for this purpose? No.
A person can have enough judgment from reading books and being well informed outside of traditional experience to make judgment calls about obvious things like a grant that literally lists DEI in its description to know whether it violates an executive order.
You said books. What books would you have read that would have informed your opinion on what grants to cancel based on DEI?
There were no books.
They canceled 1,400 grants in 22 days, which means they were canceling roughly 63 grants per day. Which means a chatbot was making more consequential decisions about American history and culture than the entire United States Congress. Now, thankfully, there are lawsuits citing the First Amendment, equal protection, separation of powers, all of it. There's also an allegation that they were conducting official government business on Signal, with auto-delete turned on, which would be a violation of the Federal Records Act. So they may have also been illegally destroying the records of the time they were illegally destroying the records. Good job, little boys. Your parents must be so proud. Well, Doge Bros, I hope you're having the day you deserve.
He's been identified. Do you remember that story where one of Elon Musk's Doge goons allegedly walked out of the government with a flash drive filled with sensitive information on Americans? We're talking potentially millions of pieces of data, including things like social security numbers. Well, he's been identified according to Wired. His name is John Sully. If John Sully stole sensitive data from the United States government for whatever purpose, most likely to sell or use in some technology firm, he should never see the light of day ever again.
Remember last year when everybody was like, hey, maybe these fetuses working for DOGE shouldn't have access to all of our data? Apparently our concerns were correct because one of those kids stole all of our data on zip drive and then asked a coworker at his day job because DOGE wasn't it. That was just a side quest for all these nerds that wanted all of our information. So once he got it, he asked one of his coworkers to help him scrub the data on his personal computer so that he could upload all of our information to his now current employer's database. Who's your current employer? I have a lot of questions. And the best part of it all is detailed in this whistleblower complaint. The same child who stole all of our fucking Social Security information told the same coworker that if he got caught, honey, he was just dependent on a presidential pardon. Our government is essentially a criminal enterprise at this point in time, and now they have all of your data. I have fucking underwear that are older than the children that stole all of our private data. But somehow, some way, this administration allowed them free reign to all of that information. But tell me more about how DOGE saved us billions of dollars or whatever the fuck they claim.
I think it was more important to reduce the federal deficit from $2 trillion to close to zero.
Did you reduce the federal deficit?
No.
I'm not trying to be a hater, okay? But I love anime. I love coming-of-age superhero movies. I like Spider-Man. I love all those guys. But if my auditors that were going into the federal government to with all my all came in looking like they were 17 years old, I would be pretty fucking worried. What the are all of these Doge kids, like,
In the accelerated high school programs, where the f are these people coming from? On a scale from 0 to 100, where 100 is the most hatred you could have for a person, and 0 is the least, for every single one of these DOGE guys, my hate meter is at like 2. There's a reason why Musk had to recruit 18-year-olds to go on the wild goose chase of that he wanted to through the federal government. It's because it was an impossible task. There was no qualified person in the universe that would have touched that proposition. All of it was trashed from the very beginning. Oh, this guy's 29? Oh, never mind. This guy.
If you ask the American people what they think of what Elon Musk and DOGE are doing with government right now, they are vehemently opposed. The reactions right now are not just in Democratic districts, they're in Republican districts. Even Republicans in my district, they're saying, I voted for Trump. I did not vote for Elon Musk. I did not vote for this. I did not vote for mass buyouts of the federal workforce. We did not vote for the corruption of gutting NASA and then having the contracts go to SpaceX. We did not vote for Starlink to start replacing critical FAA operations.
Which is the thing that's in the news. It's being discussed. Okay.
Yes. And I think that there is a very, very deep corruption at the core of this. If Elon Musk wanted to divest himself of his businesses and enter public service with his so-called business expertise, that is his prerogative. But so long as he maintains a vested financial interest in gutting the federal government, he is acting in his own self-interest and not those of the American people. I engage in a tremendous amount of constituent services. This is not the kind of district that is where town halls are typically filled to the absolute brim. People are working 2 jobs. They're doing these kinds of things. I am getting emails. I am getting phone calls. I had a telephone town hall last week that had really high numbers of attendance of people. And we ask, out of all of these attacks on immigration, the assault on Medicaid, the budget conversation, and Musk's access to government, which is the thing you are most concerned about? And overwhelmingly, even I'm surprised, overwhelmingly, the answer is they are concerned about this incursion in what they see as corruption into the federal government.
If you watch those DOGE depositions, you can see that they staff that perfectly. You're not going to find anybody more invested in eliminating programs that level the playing field and keep white boys from having to compete than incompetent white boys. They were the perfect guys for that job, not because they were particularly competent or because they had any skill or knowledge set, but because who's more invested in making sure that the playing field stays on level? Who's more invested in making sure that minorities, women, people of color, or other type of marginalized groups, LGBTQIA, who's more invested in making sure that they don't get opportunities, that their opportunities are limited? And they couldn't define DEI because DEI wasn't their directive. Their directive was to eliminate anything that didn't feel like it would benefit them. That was the directive they went by. And you can tell that by their inability to define DEI. They couldn't even pull the words diversity, equity, and inclusion out of DEI. Even when they were asked to define DEI, he was like, well, I just referred to the EO. He couldn't even pull the words that the 3 letters stand for. He couldn't name the acronym. They're wildly incompetent, but makes them perfect for the job because no one else is going to be more invested in making sure that programs that give other people an opportunity to compete are eliminated because they don't want to compete, because they can't compete. Literally didn't know his job title. Brilliantly staffed, because you're not going to get a better level of investment and make sure that other people are kept out of the game than people who can barely compete in the first place. It was a stroke of brilliance, even though I'm sure it was certain accident. It was 100% accident, and they just gave somebody's incompetent ass nephew the job. It just happened to work out that way, that those were the exact people we're talking about. 100%.
This is crazy, and I don't want it to get lost amidst everything else that's happening. We have got more insane news about Social Security and your data. And I've talked about this many times before, right? We know there have been huge problems with DOGE and our Social Security data, but it just got worse. So the Washington Post has a new story out, and I want you to listen carefully, because if the allegations in it are true, this is one of the most serious breaches of government data security in American history. So here's what we know. We have another whistleblower. This one filed a complaint with the Social Security Administration's internal watchdog in January. The Inspector General took it seriously enough to alert members of 4 congressional committees and to share it with the Government Accountability Office, which is already conducting its own audit of DOGE's data access. The complaint alleges that a former DOGE software engineer who worked inside the Social Security Administration and then left to go work for a private government contractor told multiple coworkers that he had 2 of the most sensitive databases in the federal government on a thumb drive. Those databases are called Numident and the Master Death File. Together, they contain records on more than 500 million living and dead Americans. Talking social security numbers, dates and places of birth, citizenship status, race, ethnicity, parents' names, every American on a thumb drive. According to the complaint, he told a coworker he needed help transferring the data from the thumb drive to his personal computer so he could, this is his word, sanitize it before uploading it into his new employer's systems. When another colleague refused to help because of legal concerns, he allegedly said he expected to receive a presidential pardon if his actions turned out to be illegal. The complaint also alleges that he told coworkers he had kept his government-issued laptop and his security credentials after leaving the agency, credentials that he described as having God-level access to the Social Security Administration's systems. Access he also claimed, by the way, that no other outside contractor had ever been granted. It's not just about what he may have taken. Representative Robert Garcia, the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, put it this way. This person isn't just accused of walking out the Social Security information of every American on a flash drive. He may also have the ability to edit and manipulate data at the Social Security Administration at will from outside the agency. Now, to be clear and fair, the former DOGE member denies all of this through his attorney. His former company says it conducted a thorough internal investigation and found the allegations unsubstantiated, but they were also supposed to be the recipients of this data, so can we trust them? And the Social Security Administration has also denied that it's true. But the Social Security Administration's initial response to earlier DOGE data complaints, it's been a ton of them, was to flatly deny them, saying the data was stored in a secure environment, walled off from the internet, totally safe. But then in January, the Justice Department acknowledged in court documents that DOGE members had accessed and shared sensitive Social Security data without the awareness of agency officials. In other words, they said it wasn't happening. The DOJ then admitted in court that it was. So their denials don't hold a lot of water. And there's more that is not in dispute. A separate complaint from the Social Security Administration's own former chief data officer says DOGE members uploaded copies of American Social Security data to a digital cloud using unsanctioned methods. I've talked about this before. And a third allegation says one DOGE staffer signed an agreement to share Social Security data with an unnamed political group that was trying to overturn election results in multiple states. These are whistleblower complaints being investigated by inspectors general and the Government Accountability Office. Charles Borge, the Social Security Administration's former chief data officer, who I've interviewed, the person whose entire job was protecting this data, told the Washington Post in this article, this is absolutely the worst case scenario. There could be 1 or 1 million copies of it, and we will never know now. This is what it looks like when an administration doesn't give a shit about your data. It's what it looks like when you hand unfettered access to some of the most sensitive government databases in existence to a group of young, unvetted tech bros with no oversight, no accountability, and an administration that has already promised them pardons if things go sideways. Connecticut Congressman John Larson, a Democrat, is calling for a full congressional investigation into this, and I think he's right. So let's call our representatives and tell them that we want answers about who has our data, where it went, and how this was allowed to happen.
500 million Social Security records have been stolen by a Doge bro. That's according to the Washington Post. And Trump, Elon, and Doge are about to have an epically bad night and next few months. A whistleblower has come forward, and the Inspector General of the Social Security Administration is now investigating allegations that a former DOGE employee took sensitive data on a thumb drive to his new job and bragged about it. The former software engineer and DOGE bro apparently was bragging to his new co-workers that he, quote, possessed 2 tightly restricted databases of U.S. citizens' information and was planning to use it at his new company. So let me get this straight. He stole the data he wasn't supposed to have access to, took it to his new company where he was going to use it for what? Profit? The 2 databases in questions are called the Numident and Master Death File. Yes, that's actually the name of the file. And according to the Washington Post, it's reported that these databases could have the records of more than 500 million Americans, both living and deceased. I'm so glad that this DOGE bro apparently has my mother's death record on his thumb drive. A spokesperson for the Social Security Administration, which by the way is still controlled by DOGE, I'm not sure if you knew that, released a statement saying that the Washington Post was, quote, desperate for clicks and eager to publish fake news to scare seniors. Well, when the information, including names, date of birth, death date, citizenship information, and your parents' names, is on some DOGE bro's thumb drive that he's going to use for profit, that should scare everybody.
Somehow it got even worse than Justin Fox and his lack of understanding for DEI. Let's move on to Nathan Kavanaugh, because what he was taking part in was even more illegal.
So earlier we talked about some of your communications with Mr. Davis, including, in the context of you emailing yourself, I think you were saying, and then using that email on Signal to send to Mr. Davis. Do you remember talking about that with Mr. Robinson earlier?
I do.
Okay. Walk me through that process exactly.
There was a weekly scorecard, as it was called, where we reported on savings across each agency. It was black text in an Excel spreadsheet file. That was downloaded. Steve preferred that to be sent over Signal. Signal is not on a government device, so we downloaded it and sent it to Steve on Signal. Okay. That was the extent of.
So Mr. Davis was not on a government device?
I don't know if he was on a government device or not. I know he preferred to receive the scorecard on Signal.
Steve Davis, Elon Musk's right-hand man who was put in charge of this whole DOGE thing on the ground, even though Elon Musk's name was attached to it above hand. That is before Musk was in, the White House standing next to Donald Trump with his stupid hat on every day and sunglasses dictating what Trump should be doing. What we didn't know is that Steve Davis, who had been working with Musk, I believe when he was a part of taking over Twitter and all these other things, was put in charge. And he was apparently the overseer that told Nathan Kavanaugh, again, I'm going to be your excuse as to reasons why you can later, if we ever get busted, say, I was just following orders. And the orders that he was following had to do with stealing information, uploading it to, again, that Signal chat. We've heard about that when it comes to the way Pete Hegseth in the military was sharing classified information, again, via a Signal chat. PBS talked about what it is that was going on, though, in better detail than I can tell you.
The Social Security Administration now says members of Elon Musk's DOGE team working at the agency last year accessed and shared sensitive data. In a court filing earlier this month, the Trump administration amended what it had previously disclosed, writing that one DOGE employee at SSA signed an agreement with an unnamed political advocacy group to analyze voter rolls to, quote, find evidence of voter fraud and to overturn election results in certain states. In another instance, a DOGE member shared personally identifiable information of 1,000 people in an encrypted email attachment, though the government says they aren't sure what specifically was shared or whether it was accessed. And SSA also said DOGE shared data on third-party cloud servers that are, quote, outside SSA's security protocols, so the agency doesn't know what information was shared or if it still exists on the server.
As they shared all of our personal information to who knows and also to what kind of unsecured locations for anyone else that they didn't even mean to share it with happened, we're just supposed to move on and be like, waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse. You notice every time these politicians that were covering for this, talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, every time it was to cover up for these illegal activities. So how much of our Social Security information, personal information, parental information, home information, living information, employee information, everything about you based off of your Social Security number is now been given to these idiots like these guys who have no idea what they're talking.
If you tend to get upset about data leaks, sit down, because this one's a kick in the pants. A whistleblower has come out and said that a former DOGE engineer that started working at their company says they can get them a ton of Social Security Administration data. The whistleblower said that the former employee claimed to have Numident data and the master death file. Numident stands for numerical ID. In other words, it's data on every single person that has a Social Security number. Yes, that's over 500 million people, living and dead. The whistleblower said that the DOGE employee needed help getting the data off the thumb drive onto their personal computer, and then they could sanitize the data before the new company could use it. It's absolutely absurd. If you remember last year, the chief data officer at Social Security, they also said that, hey, DOGE was being a little loosey-goosey with data, uploading it into places it shouldn't have. And even the Trump administration has admitted that some of those employees may have accessed data that they shouldn't have. Whether or not this whistleblower complaint is substantiated, right now, everyone that's investigated has said, no, nothing bad has happened. But of course, that's what you would say. First, I would go to My Social Security and register if you haven't done so already so that no one else can do it for you. Then I would go to each of the credit bureaus and I would freeze your credit. By freezing your credit, no one can open up a new line of credit knowing your information. If you do those two things, you'll stop a ton of potential issues. We can't do anything to stop this. I mean, if DOGE has access to your Social Security data from the Social Security Administration, what can we do about it? But if you take some steps, you can mitigate the damage. Fortunately, it feels like every single day there's another data breach, but that's the world we live in. Follow for more, and I'll try to keep you in the know and protected.
You ever see a meme that is just too spicy to be real? I'm talking a meme like this one. In 1919, Ford wanted to use extra profits to raise employee wages and employ more people. DOGE sued them, saying a corporation's only responsibility is to increase shareholder value. This set the precedent for current U.S. corporate law. They even provide a source. And what is up with this logo? So just to clarify, one company says, hey, I'm going to pay my employees better because that's the right thing to do. Then a different company, their competitor, objection, Your Honor, objection, illegal. Yeah, a really good habit to get in is to just take 10 seconds to Google it. And in this case, they provided a source, but you can just like take a series of keywords in order from whatever you're looking for. And that's usually a good way to find it. And first, I gotta find this DOGE logo. Is this real? Bro, what? DOGE Brothers used a logo that resembled the Star of David, featuring two interlocking triangles representing the unity and brotherhood of the Dodge brothers, John Francis Dodge and Horace Eldon Dodge, who were not Jewish. So it was first used in 1914, discontinued in 1938. Whole articles about it? What? So am I the only one who's wondering who put up the money to help them found Dodge Motor Company? Because that's quite the coincidence. If you know your history of Henry Ford, they specifically addressed this. One popular belief was that the symbol was chosen to anger their competitor Henry Ford, a notorious anti-Semite, but the Dodge brothers insist that that's not what it was. It was just a coincidence. But anyways, then just type in the information you're looking for. In 1919, Dodge sued Ford over raising employee wages, and voila. There's the Wikipedia article. Holy shit. The Michigan Supreme Court held that Henry Ford had to operate the Ford Motor Company in the interests of its shareholders rather than in a manner for the benefit of his employees or customers. It is often taught as affirming the principle of shareholder primacy in corporate America. As of 2022, in Delaware, the jurisdiction where over half of all U.S. public companies are domiciled, shareholder primacy is still upheld. So yes, you are reading that right. Pfizer is legally obligated to do anything that will increase their shareholder value, even if it comes at the expense of your health, your happiness, your finances, your medical care. The same is true for General Mills with your cereal. The same is true for every public corporation in America. That is why you should support family and founder-owned businesses. Because if you're a public corporation, you only answer to shareholders, and you are legally bound to answer to shareholders. And the biggest shareholder of every public corporation is Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, which is actually just Vanguard and BlackRock because BlackRock owns State Street. And you can probably follow the rabbit hole from there. I'm not going to say anymore. But in other news, there are some crazy stories developing in the crypto world, and we're going to be breaking it all down tonight on the Maha podcast, live on X at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can catch it on my profile or on the Club Maha X profile. Like the Melania coin, like the president of Argentina rug pulling his entire country on a fake crypto coin, and a whole bunch more. And we're going to be breaking down the news, but we're also going to be having like a real deep, like heart discussion about what's the point of crypto? Is crypto dead? Like, how do you even support crypto at this point? And what's coming next? And how do you navigate these waters? It's going to be interesting, important, wild, Definitely tune in. Sorry, Easter egg. I can't let this whole DOGE Star of David thing go. I'm just very curious. Because it is true that the Rothschild family funded a whole bunch of the robber baron titan of industry folk that were the Industrial Revolution. So did the Rothschilds fund the founding of Dodge Motor Company? AI says no, the Rothschilds did not fund the founding of Dodge Motor Company. It was founded in 1900. Wait a minute. The logo wasn't used until 1914, right? Right. So did something happen or change at Dodge in 1914? Did Dodge expand in 1914? Yes. The Dodge brothers decided to manufacture their own cars after supplying parts to Ford. They incorporated Dodge Brothers on July 17th, 1914, with a capitalization of $5 million in common stock. Now listen, I don't know what that means, and I don't know if they had any help going public with their company or any funding, turning their repair shop into one of America's foremost car companies. If any of you guys have any links, please let me know down below. But that's just a really interesting coincidence. That's very strange. Like, out of all the logos and out of all the symbols, out of every graphic that you could pick, you just so happen to pick a Star of David to counter the American car industry being absolutely just dominated by Henry Ford. Really? Really? Yeah, I don't know.
We have some pretty major news right now. A DOGE employee allegedly stole sensitive Social Security data of millions of Americans, put it on a thumb drive, and brought it to his new private employer, according to a new report published by the Washington Post. So this is pretty stunning. A former DOGE software engineer told his coworkers that he was in possession of 2 tightly restricted databases of U.S. citizen information and was planning to use that information at his new company. And now the Social Security Inspector General is investigating it. I mean, this would be a crime as well, not just an internal issue. The Washington Post reported that these databases could include records for more than 500 million living and dead Americans, including Social Security numbers, places and dates of birth, citizenship, race, ethnicity, and parents' name. So be aware that your information could be in the hands of a DOGE engineer and at this new job that he's at. Major news right now, spread the word. Follow along, stay up to date on all the news you need to know about.
Anyway, welcome back, guys. Later, they will literally be screaming, black people are the issue we have in this country. If not because of black people, we would have gone farther than we are. Black Americans are where we are. In fact, we cannot give them any position because they don't have anything to offer. This is their person. This is their products. This is their uncle. Look at, even when they were interviewing these guys literally exposed a lot of things. Guys in their 20s are able to commit this with over $500 million. And you want to still convince me that black Americans are your problem? You want to still convince me, Sonia, that the people that are causing the harm to the society are black Americans? Sorry, you cannot. Because we have gotten to that point where we have literally seen every single thing in the secret being open. Remember when this DOGE thing started, black Americans were literally saying and advocating that, you see this same line people are going to, we are not really comfortable with this line that people are going to. But a lot of them came from at it, oh, you know, it's Elon Musk, blah, 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 east, west, north, and south. There is nothing that is actually going to happen, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is the result. Ah, God. I just wish, as at this point, I have a country to transport black Americans out of America. Because it's just a whole lot to deal with. It's a whole lot to fight. It's a whole lot to deal with. It's a whole lot to do this. It's a whole lot to do that. And it's sad. Very, very sad. In fact, it has even gotten to that point where black Americans will literally said, if you know you're a white person, get out of this country. Because those ones that are in the hierarchy, those ones that are supposed to be protecting the fate of others, those ones that are supposed to be doing what they needed to do, are still the same ones that are destroying the system. Anyways, let me not even stress too much. You guys are I've already seen everything. It's just a whole lot anyways. Yeah. Just let me know what you think in the comment section, and credits to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. And I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you, liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. Yes, guys, with that being said, with no further ado, I do like I always say in my videos. I'm going to be saying bye, and I'll see you guys in my next one. It is well with Black Americans. And if you're watching this video as a Black American person, I'm sending you guys hugs. Because honestly, you guys have proved that in every aspect of the American system, you guys knows everything. You know the in and out. Anybody that is arguing with you, people that do not know the in and out, is just deceiving his or herself. And that's the honest truth. Bye, guys. See you in my next one. I love you guys.